And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to the Black Powder Podcast here on the Firearms Radio Network. Thank you for tuning in to the Firearms Radio Network. We really appreciate it. My name is Michael White, a.k.a. MW for Liberty. That's MW like Modern Warfare, the number 4, Liberty. Also, a.k.a. Miguel Blanco. That's what they call me south of the border when I go buy guns from the ATF. I am joined, as always, by my melanated brother in arms, Mr. Marcus Matthews, the only real libertarian, is here tonight. Marcus, how are you?
I'm just tippy-tappy. I'm very excited about tonight, and I can't wait to get started.
Absolutely. And also, I'm joined by Eric Parker, Bold Liberty, was a Floridian, now in North Carolina. Eric, how are you tonight?
Doing good, holding it down in these foothills.
Holding it down. Before we get started tonight with tonight's guest, we got to pay some bills. We are sponsored by 1776swag.com. 1776 Swag. It's not treason if you don't lose. 1776swag.com. Visit them. Get all your Patriot apparel there. Also, Common Arms Trade Company, spelled like it sounds like it's spelled. Licensed FFL in Florida. Your one-stop shop for all things 2A. If you want to buy a custom battle rifle, not just some off-the-shelf elf that everybody else can get, give Common Arms Trade Company a call. Use promo code Black Powder to save 10% off any purchase over $100. We are also sponsored by Hornytown Guns and Ammo in Hornytown, North Carolina. Apparently a man with a Connex box, but he's an FFL, so go visit him. If you're by Winston-Salem, go visit Hornytown. Eric, you'll come meet him, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We'll meet up in
Eric will come and meet them. We're also sponsored tonight, I should say, by Michael White for State Representative in Arkansas. Yeah. I don't know if you know this, but there's a winnable race here in Arkansas. There's a gentleman running in a two-way race in a 50-50 split district where he convinced the Republicans not to run anybody so he can win. So visit mw4liberty.com and give lovingly and generously if you want to donate to the campaign, because you know what? God loves a good giver. You know what else God loves? God loves the Jewish people. They're the chosen people of God. Everybody knows that. I was a good Catholic kid. I went to catechism class, and that's what I was told. And tonight, we have a gentleman. He is not just the 2020 vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. He's not only the gentleman that I know has the control module for the Jewish space laser. He's also one of the coolest people in the Liberty movement. Mr. Spike Cohen, welcome to the Black Powder Podcast.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for noting my chosenness. You are all safe for now.
Yes.
So,
and again, any listeners tonight will get a free complimentary gallon of blue paint in the Black Powder Podcast. Just use promo code Blue Paint, and we'll send it to you. All right. So I think, Marcus, I still got that echo. I don't know if your soundboard was doing that. Okay, I'm back. Spike, we obviously all know you, and everybody knows you, I think, that I'm friends with, but people will be listening to this who don't know you and don't know what you do. So tell us a little bit about you and about, the You Are the Power thing that you got going on.
Sure. So first of all, I am someone who only in this moment discovered that there in the state just north of me in North Carolina, there's a town called Hornytown. I looked it up. There is actually Hornytown, South Carolina. It's not even that far from me. Like
you feel like I would make this up?
We're not lying.
No, clearly not. Clearly not. No, I have a trip to make, apparently.
Yeah, it's trust but verify. That's what that was.
Right. Trust but verify. Horny. There we go. So yeah, I was the 2020 Libertarian VP nominee. Before that, I was a serial entrepreneur. Retired in 2017, so I could focus on my purpose, which is apparently this. And in 2020, during the campaign, I realized that there was a lot that needed to be done to spread not just the liberty movement and our ideas, but also give us a viable path towards actually working together to spread liberty instead of doing the thing we do where we're constantly arguing with each other, which is fun, but not as fun as actually helping people. And so starting in 2021, I started what eventually became You Are the Power in 22. And we have been helping people ever since who are fighting against being victimized by their local governments. And we've done incredible work. If you want to find out more, go to youarethepower.net. or stay tuned to this this interview, this episode, because I think we're going to be talking about some of the stuff we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I want to get into is some of your war stories, some of the things you've done, some of the things you have going on. I know, I mean, there's one right now, obviously, that you tweeted about today that is a really heart-wrenching case. We had Candace on the other a couple weeks ago talking about family court stuff. And of course, we all know how great the family court system is in America. They're not biased or overstepping at all, right? They're always fair and objective. So what's going on with that case?
Yeah, so we actually have 4 cases right now. 3 of them are in Georgia, and 1 is in Texas. And we, what's happening is this is actually the first times that we've worked on this type of specific case where a family has 1 or more children. Parents have 1 or more children with some kind of chronic health disorder, and a child abuse physician decides, actually, I think this is abuse, because if they say it's not abuse, they don't get a federal check, but if they do say it's abuse, they do get a federal check. And yet, for some reason, they often just say it's abuse, even though every bit of evidence shows that there isn't. But what's happened is now that we've started exposing these stories, more and more families are coming out of the woodwork saying, hey, this happened to us too, and providing us with all the evidence and showing us. So we actually have many more that we are in the process of vetting to make sure they're all legit, because it's very possible 1 or more of them could actually be abuse and they're just trying to get our help. But the ones that are obviously not abuse, we are releasing them one after the next. And the most recent one that I put out was about the Sullivan family, and the Sullivan parents. It's Diana and Corey Sullivan. They got married as they were high school sweethearts. They got married soon after. They had to use IVF to have their 3 children. They had a daughter, Arabella, and then later they had twins, Amelia and Christian. It turns out the reason that they had to get IVF and that there were so many complications, especially with the twins, is because Diana, or Diane, I can't remember now. I'll have to look that up. But the mother, is it Diana? Yeah, Diana. She has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and that can cause all sorts of things, including having complications with the pregnancy. So long story short, Amelia has some issues, and before they knew that she was not just dealing with her multiple diagnoses as a result of being a preemie who was born 3 pounds, they took her to a hospital. And during their examination of Amelia, they found out that not only did she have a fracture in her leg, but she also had multiple fractures that were at different stages of healing, many of which were probably when she was still gestating, when she was still in utero. And so they ended up taking her to a children's hospital, where the child abuse physician, Dr. Knox, said that she was being abused. And again, every bit of evidence shows that Amelia was not being abused. And it turns out that Dr. Knox has been fired from multiple other facilities, or actually she resigned under investigation, because she has a long history of misdiagnosing cases of children being sick as being abuse, and actually pressured her colleagues to back her up and join her in misdiagnosing children. She somehow got a job continuing to do that at this children's hospital. And so the most recent update on this, the DFACS, the Department of Family and Children Services, that's what they call CPS in Georgia, they came with the police without a warrant or a court order, and showed up. Or no, that was a different case. They did have a court order, but they showed up. An investigation showed that there was no danger to the children or anything else, but they still took the kids, because that's what they always do. They steal the kids, and they stole the kids. Corey, the father, was arrested but has not been indicted for multiple counts of abuse. Well, it's very obvious why he hasn't been indicted. Literally every single bit of evidence they have shows not only are they innocent, but the government is guilty. But that didn't stop them from taking the children, and it didn't stop the judge from earlier today ordering non-reunification. And what that means is that currently the children are with the mother, with Diana's mother. but they will likely be put up for adoption. And it will not be, there will be no input from the parents who they will be adopted to. They may not even get to know who they will be adopted to. And it is likely that if that happens, they'll never see the kids again. But they will have to pay $2,000 a month in child support. Not to those parents, but to the state of Georgia.
So basically, because you cover multiple jurisdictions, this not just in Georgia, they've turned this into a scenario just like the war on drugs, where the government is incentivizing local agencies to do what they do.
Yep. That's literally what's happening, is that if you say, if you look at all these government officials as sort of a chain that or a assembly line that these cases have to go to, every single person on that assembly line, the child abuse physician, the caseworker, the judge, everyone that has to look at that case at some point or sometimes at multiple points, if they say that it's not child abuse, they don't get an additional check or additional funding for their agency. And if it turns out that it is abuse, it falls on them. They can get in trouble for that. They could get, demoted or fired or reprimanded or something like that. But if they do say it's abuse, they do get a check, or their agency or department does get funding. And if it turns out it's not abuse, they were just doing their jobs. And so there's literally no incentive for them to not just say every single thing that's in front of them is abuse. So basically, if you bring a child to a children's hospital in Georgia or many of these other states as well, and they have any kind of fracture at all, and it's not immediately explained by like it was a car accident or something like that, they're going to say it's abuse. They're almost certain to say it's abuse, and you will spend months or even in some cases years, as is the case with the Timms family also in Georgia, where they have been fighting this for 2 years and have not had their children in their home for 2 years, and have been facing the possibility of being indicted for 2 years, despite the fact that there is absolutely every bit of evidence that the child in that case has, in fact, I believe that's Ehlers-Danlos as well. They're all starting to meld together, but they have a chronic health condition as well. They're still not giving the kid back. And we believe, as we're investigating these further, it looks like it's worse than that. It looks like they also have these contracts with the providers of the different services in that foster care pipeline, which further incentivizes that they just shove as many kids down the pipeline. We are hearing, and we have not yet released who this is, and we're still vetting it, but we're hearing rumors from possible former people in defects that they were told, if a child is out of foster care and you don't immediately replace them with another new child, you're fired.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Ooh.
Yeah. And one point I want to make, these people that are going through these ordeals with the government, there's a financial burden that is placed upon them too.
Well, yeah, and you're yanking the father, or yanking the their ability to make money. And this is just like the war on drugs. You're breaking a family up. You're taking their ability to earn a living. Then also throwing on an incredibly monetarily trying issue, which is any sort of court battle against an unlimited funding, a state agency, essentially. Yeah. So again, I was in business and you were in business before. If you sold a product, my job was to sell that product to everybody. Everybody needs this product, right? Yep. My widget can fix everything. Oh, you're going bald like I am now. You need to get this widget. It's going to keep you from going bald. Oh, it's too hot in your house. My widget cools your house down, right? This is a business that exists to profit off of broken families, abuse allegations, and then the system set up to deal with that. So it's not any coincidence that everything begins to look like, oh, this is it, right?
They get nothing but incentive to say it's abuse. And there is no feedback loop or punishment that happens or reprimand or anything that happens if they say it's abuse and it turns out not to be. But if they say it isn't abuse and it turns out that it was abuse, they'll definitely be in trouble. Or if they just don't say it's abuse, and that means that a foster kid is out of the system without a new one to replace them, they'll also get in trouble for that, even if it turns out that it's not abuse. So like literally everything in this pipeline is, as we are discovering more about how this works from behind the scenes, this is as corrupt of a system. If they whether they intended for it to be this bad or they didn't, if they did intend for it to be this bad, they couldn't have possibly made it worse than it already ended up being. And so what we're asking people to do is to number one, what we're asking people to do is to email Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, who has the power to stop this. He can fire Candace Brochi or Brosi, I forget, I'm not sure how to, or Brose, but he appointed her to head DFACS. She's a political hack. She has no experience with children's services. I have a feeling she has no idea what's even going on with any of this. She needs to be fired and replaced with someone who does understand this and who is going to dive into this. He also needs to order the immediate reunification of these 3 families. And if he reaches out to us, we can give him a list of other families that we're vetting too that probably need to be reunified as well. And so we're asking people to do that, to contact Brian Kemp about that. What we're also asking people to do is to go to youarethepower.net/Sullivan, SULLIVAN. And that has the list of officials to contact for the Sullivan family. We even have a wording template that you can use when you contact them, explaining the situation. Because if you're anything like me, you are so pissed off and incensed by this. The only thing you could muster right now is probably something that wouldn't be very helpful in contacting them and trying to get them to do the right thing. So we have the wording explaining everything right there. You can use that. You can copy paste it or just take parts of it that you want to use, add your own wording there as well. And you can email or call them. We are trying to get significant public pressure on these officials to back off and do the right thing. Right now, it is politically expedient for them to just let it go through the system and them not have to worry about it. We want to make it politically expedient for them not to do that and to do the right thing instead. And for those who are saying possibly, well, there's nothing we can do about this, these officials are so corrupt. In the case, there was a case in Dallas last year where a child was taken from Rodney and Tamisha Jackson. We and our partners were able to, other organizations that were working on it, were able to put enough pressure on CPS that they gave baby Mila back to that family. Also, in the case of one of these families in Georgia, the Hernandez family, we were able to get the judge to do a complete 180 on their case and allow the children to go back to one of their relatives. She's not able to allow them to be completely reunified because there's pending criminal charges, but she went from completely ignoring medical experts and just saying, these kids are going to stay in the foster care system, to completely doing a 180. And it just so happened that she had received several thousand emails from people that were saying, do the right thing. This does work. If we get enough public pressure on these people are not Sauron. They're not the embodiment of evil. They are just doing their jobs. And, they wake up and they punch the clock and they type the thing and they go, okay, I'm going home now. And they write off the horrific things they do by going, well, I'm probably helping someone here. And, if I weren't doing it, someone else would be doing it. And they're not, they shut down. They're probably drinking coffee just to try to stay awake. We talk about the banality of evil. This is that. And these people go home and kiss their kids, on the cheek before they go to bed, and they go to church and they go and meet their loved ones, and they think they're good people. So we can actually give them a chance to prove that. So if you go to youarethepower.net/Sullivan, we also have other ones for the Timms family and the Hernandez family. youarethepower.net/Timms, TIMMS. And youarethepower.net/Hernandez, HERNANDEZ. And it's the same thing on those as well. That has all the officials listed, the wording you can use to send out to them. And with your help, we can get these families reunited, get these ridiculous charges behind them, and get this entire nightmare out of their way.
So is Georgia so far the number one offender? I mean, is this a state that stands out above the rest significantly in bad actions? I mean, so far?
It's so far, yes, but it's hard to tell, because what's happening is we first found out about the Hernandez family. Mm-hmm. And as we were working on that, all of these other families from Georgia started contacting us. we've also had other families contact us in other states. We're vetting their causes as well. Jocelyn Sanders in Dallas again. She has a similar situation we're working on. You can go to youarethepower.net/Sanders and help us with that one as well. I don't know how much of it is that Georgia is uniquely terrible in this and how much of it is just the inertia of the fact that we started there, or maybe some combination of those things. But we're hearing anecdotally that this is bad in almost every state.
I'd imagine
this is a serious problem, that they have this same structure kind of across the board. So it would not surprise me as we dive more and more into this if it turns out that we're dealing with dozens of these cases. And the silver lining there is if we can make serious headway in one state, we can have a domino effect and see serious change in how CPS, DSS, DFACS, whatever it's called in the given state, it works on these types of cases. Because what we're hearing is abuse is overlooked because abusers know how to work the system and know how to try to stay out of trouble. But actual just legit parents who are trying to get help for their kids don't know how to work the system, aren't worried about getting in trouble, because why would they get in trouble? They didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
And they're getting victimized because they gotta throw some kids into their foster system.
Oh man,
keep the machine rolling. Now there's two points I want to touch on real quick. My bad, Eric. I'm gonna let you go real quick. First of all, the widget that Michael said he made for male pattern baldness, I need that. I need that.
It doesn't work clearly.
It's a tag.
It's a ball cap, Marcus. That's what it is. Yeah.
Well,
Oh no.
Oh
no.
So not to lighten what we're talking about, because this is very serious shit, but it sounds at the end of the day, it's about government accountability, and I think that's where libertarians and 501 whatever organizations, that's where they seem to merge, where we can push for government accountability. And why I firmly believe in you have to hold Jason Aldean, but the small town, but tyranny starts in the small towns, and it just grows like a pile of
with this one,
yeah.
So, Spike, I just wanted to know, how are things looking for the Sullivan family and the legal system? Are they able to appeal this decision? I mean, I'm assuming obviously they obviously have a legal team involved. I know there's probably legal fees that they're paying. How can we help out the family? I'm assuming You Are the Power is a great way. So I lived in Jacksonville, Florida. I worked at Kings Bay Navy Base there in Georgia. It's in St. Mary's, right next to Kingsland. I believe the family's in Kingsland, Georgia. So, I mean, it's hitting close home. How can we help these out? How are things looking in their the judicial system for them?
Yeah. So this has been a significant, putting aside the absolute trauma they've been going through for months now, and the horror at the thought of possibly never seeing their kids again and possibly being, facing criminal charges. This has been a significant financial cost to them as well. They are spending a fortune on legal fees. And as you guys said, they're up against the Leviathan of the state, which has essentially unlimited funds to fight this. And so they have spent a lot of money. They are now facing, so here's where we stand, and this will also explain some of the costs that is built in. The judge, in ordering non-reunification, he has also said that he is going to allow for genetic testing to be allowed on the kid, on Amelia, to confirm that she has Ehlers-Danlos. In the meantime, their 3 children are with Diana's mother, and they're saying that the mother has to move into their house, into Corey and Diana's house, so that the children are in their own home. But Corey and Diana can't be there, so they have to leave, and they have to start paying $2,000, not to Corey's mother, but to the state. So they not only have to continue taking care of their household costs, they have to start paying $2,000 a month to the state, and they have to find another place to live and probably have costs for rent with that as well, in addition to continuing to fight this and getting genetic testing and everything else. Now, The hope is that the judge has claimed that if the test comes back that the child has Ehlers-Danlos, then he will reconsider it. Why that wouldn't be, I will completely drop all of this and give you your kids back because clearly there's nothing wrong with the kid and there's no evidence that there's anything wrong with the kid, I don't know. And unfortunately, what we're hearing is that this judge typically just sides with whatever the government says. It doesn't matter what you bring in. The government says this is what happened, and he goes, "Okay, this is what happened."
And so I'd imagine, like most states, his pension's probably funded by Title 4D funds, right? I mean,
of course, yeah, no, it's family court, yeah, no, absolutely, family court, yeah, that is exactly what this is they're incentivized to do this. The more abuse they can find, the more they can rip families apart, the more federal money they get. So what we're hoping is there's two things. If you go to youarethepower.net/Sullivan. There is I'm not sure if it's a GoFundMe or a Give Send Go, but it's a fundraiser link to help the Sullivan family. So that's there as well. Thank you for that. So that's there as well. But one of the people to contact is that judge. And we're hoping between the testing showing that Amelia has Ehlers-Danlos and like several thousand people saying, "Hey, schmuck, let this family go." But you don't call him a schmuck, but say, "Hey, buddy, hey, pal, my new friend, why don't you, hey, friend, why don't you let this, honorable, your honor, my friend, your honor, why don't you give this kid back to his family and let them be reunified?" We're hoping that that's what can happen. So yeah,
so what is the legislative answer, Spike? Is there a legislative answer for this? What does a reformed family court look like? Or is this an issue of there doesn't need to be a family court?
I mean, if it's going to be like this, it'd be better for there not to be one, to be perfectly honest. The legislative fix would have to involve there being some kind of disincentivization of just calling everything abuse. Like there'd have to be some kind of structure in place where they're not being incentivized. They're not being paid based on abuse cases that they get, but they're just being paid to do their job. And I mean, frankly, we should be doing this across the board. Prosecutors should no longer be getting paid based on how many convictions they get, but on just doing their job. Like that should be across the board. We need to stop incentivizing people losing to the court system, right? So I think that would have to be it. There's a lot of detail in what that would involve, but I would say just generally speaking, it would have to have it so that there is no more or less incentive for them to say that it is or isn't abuse. I mean, that it simply is. Yeah. If it's abuse, call it abuse. And if it's not abuse, don't call it abuse. And just as simple as that, there's nothing there pushing them one way or another other than the facts.
Right. I mean, that's always kind of been the issue is the moral hazard of federal money towards states and municipalities has been it's weaponized the police over the decades. It essentially, caused the war on drugs to go into overdrive. And now you have it, I guess, the same thing in the family court system. So yeah, I mean, when you help out, this is what you end up getting with helping out, right? Is it always kind of goes this way? Yeah. The
federal fix is getting the federal government out of family court entirely. There's no constitutional reason for them to be doing it, and there's sure as hell no moral or ethical reason for them to be doing
100%.
It. Whatever justification there was to do it in the first place, that these family courts were underfunded or whatever, okay, fine, then figure out how to make it work in your state budget. The feds are printing out money through the Federal Reserve to tear families apart, and it's just I want to say it's not working, but I increasingly think it's working exactly how they intended to work.
No, I think you're absolutely correct.
Yeah, because when you go to court, most Americans don't realize, you as an individual going to court, there's usually, at minimum, there's three forces against you. There's a law enforcement aspect, there's the prosecution aspect, and then there's the judge aspect. And all three of them are paid by the same people. So they work together. The judge will be on the 5th floor, the prosecutor's on the 6th floor, the cops are on the 3rd floor. And they just go up and down that elevator to get you. And the accountability aspect of this whole issue. And I think this is probably the worst thing that Americans can fight is the judicial system, because it is unstoppable in that we're going back to their unlimited resources.
Yeah. A big way to deal with this is exactly, Kenneth. That's exactly it. I increasingly think It's either working exactly as designed, or if they designed it if they meant to design it this way, they couldn't do a better job at it. Like it is as disgusting of a system as you can imagine. And I think the real answer is that, hey, Lars, I think the real answer is federal defunding, like enough of having the feds involved in it. They never should have been involved in it. And if there was any argument ever to be had that maybe they should, we have decades of evidence to show that it's literally making things worse. It is turning or maybe it always was this way, but if it wasn't, they've certainly turned it into a system where you have these sort of lazy predators who are just looking for the easiest prey. So when there's an actual case of abuse and the abusive parents are doing everything they can to cover their tracks and, hide the abuse and work the system, they go, yeah, it's too much. But then when there's just like a kid with fractures in front of them because they have a chronic health issue and the parents are telling them everything and not invoking the fifth and, completely open because, hey, I'm not doing anything wrong. I just want my kid to get better.
Help my kid.
But that's the one I'm going after.
Yeah. Oh man. So I think when you probably started You Are the Power. I'm sorry, Eric, you want to go ahead? My apologies.
Michael, I think you're about to say the same thing I was going to. So go ahead.
I was going to say when you started this, you probably didn't think it was going to be so family court focused, I would imagine.
Exactly what I was about to say.
Me too.
Yeah. So I had a feeling we'd do some of this, and last year when I realized that we would take on a certain type of case and then like a bunch of people would come out of the woodwork about that because, we were talking about that and people would say, hey, that's like my case. So I guess in the abstract, I probably would have thought that this would happen. That's completely different from actually talking to real people who wake up crying every morning because they are scared that they'll never see their kids again soon.
Right.
And they are running out of money. And they are I want to say running out of will, but that's all they have is will. All they have is the will to keep fighting for this because they want their kids back. And I meet grown adults who are often reduced to tears and don't even have the time to process the fact that they're often being threatened with years in prison for something that they didn't do, something that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And they don't even think about that. And they often don't even think about the money. They literally just want their kids back. Mm-hmm. And I don't even have kids, but I could imagine being told that I'd never see my nieces or nephews again. That is enough to horrify me. Or being told, something that we think you abused your nephew or one of your nieces, even though I didn't. It was they're sick or something like that, and I'll never see them again. And I could face charges. That enough horrifies me. My kids, I don't even personally know how horrifying that must be. But I watch it. I watched that happen. So no, I didn't necessarily think that this is where it would lead me. But I said when we started You Are the Power, this is definitely going to lead us in a bunch of really horrifying and infuriating directions. Our first case that we took on was a city council that was using eminent domain to seize a low-income convalescent home, privately owned convalescent home, and sending elderly, mentally disabled people off to gosh knows where because they wanted to seize the property and build a parking lot to increase the value of all their businesses that were adjacent to that property. Like they literally got on the council, and if you looked, all of their businesses were just all around it. And they all got on the council so they could do this to them. I thought that was. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying that, like, when you talk to people who still believe in big government, or you talk to statists, you tend to see that, like, people on this side of it in the liberty community realize the moral hazards and the bad acting that happens whenever you give government power. Right? We know these stories. We see these horror stories, and we say, "Hey, look, pregame, or you said earlier, they're not Sauron, right? We look at this like, hey, this is the ring of power, right? Like it needs to just be gone." Yeah. And I think that's what changes between somebody. If you ever find yourself on the wrong side of the state, you will quickly find yourself, being a little more liberty minded. And so, also kind of what you do too is I think you bring awareness that this is happening, not just the help you're giving these people directly, but you're helping increase knowledge and awareness that might eventually change the system to prevent this. Because every time someone wants more government, this is what they're asking for.
And that was the secret sauce of what I figured out You Were the Power could do back in 2020.
Yeah.
Because I was meeting people who I was meeting many different people. I would meet people who were in the liberty movement and were growing frustrated because they didn't feel like we were ever working on anything that had any hope of winning. You know, we're always running for president, we're running for governor, we're running for Senate. You know, we're not even being polled. Like there's not like the odds of this happening. It's good for messaging. It's a useful thing. I said this as someone that ran for vice president. It does have a useful purpose, but the reality is it can be very like draining of energy for people that are doing it cycle after cycle after cycle. So I wanted to give them something that actually had some wins, small wins to it, and we could build up to bigger wins. And I wanted to give them something that was somewhat local, that didn't, wasn't this big Leviathan, the national level government. It's something in their city or their county or their state or one similar to theirs, and we could work together on it. I also wanted to give them something where we weren't constantly fighting each other. And I wanted to help the people that were showing up to my campaign events and telling me about some horrific thing that was being done by their city council or their zoning board or their CPS or whatever. And I'd say, listen, I'm running for vice president. It's a national race. And I'm not from here. Here, let me see if I can find someone that can help you. I wanted to create that network of people that could help people like that. But the other thing that I saw was people who, when they would hear about specific cases of abuse of government, every single one of them said, that's terrible, we need to do something about it. But then they default back to, well, but we need government for this and we need government for that. And I realized that at its core, every single one of those people have the same expectation of being respected as an individual human being, and that they themselves will respect other people as individual human beings, that the four of us have. But they put it aside for the government. They put that expectation of human respect, of individual human respect, aside when it's now a person that's in the government. Even though if that exact same government official were acting outside of that capacity as a government official and just walking down the street and pointed a gun at them and said, give me 25% of what's in your wallet, they'd have a major problem with that. Yeah. But if that same politician gets behind a podium and wears a fancy suit and says, I'm going to be introducing a new 25% tax to pay for this new entitlement program I'm creating, a lot of them would be okay with it. Some of them would go, I don't know, that seems like a lot. But they wouldn't be as outraged as they were if that person was actually holding a gun, even though what they're doing behind that podium has far more harm being done than if they were just pointing a gun at one person.
Yeah.
And what I realized is if we show these examples, these no-brainer examples, that the government is out of control by design, and that it's because we're not expecting them to respect us as individual human beings, I could bypass the entire political argument. No one gives me pushback on these causes.
That's right.
Every once in a while, someone will go, maybe we don't have the whole story or whatever. But then they see that we do have the whole story and they shut right up, or they join us in fighting on the cause. No one shows up and goes, I think the government should be tearing families apart. There's no political ideology that says that that's good. Right. So what I'm finding is we are bringing people into the movement without telling them, fighting with them about ideology or about our ideas or anything else. I'm just saying, hey, look, here's this terrible thing. You agree with me that this is a terrible thing. Here's how you can help us. Oh, hey, thanks for helping us with that. Here's this next terrible thing. Here's how you can help us. Oh, hey, thanks for helping us with that. Here's this really great thing that we're working on. You can help us with that. A charitable thing or a food drive or, feeding the homeless or a park cleanup or something like that. Hey, thanks for helping us on that. Here's this other terrible thing that's happening. And so we're actually turning people not just into active members of liberty activism without even necessarily assigning themselves to libertarianism. We're consistently exposing them to the consequence of government that is out of control and not respecting them as individual human beings. And it might take a long time for some of them, but it eventually works its way through. And that's what we're doing.
I mean, because here we are, I think, on the 4th anniversary of the Breonna Taylor incident. I think is today. Is that correct?
It was
wow.
today.
Okay.
Yeah, today. And so I saw a number of what I consider to be large statist identities today on X were tweeting about this or posting, whatever you call it now, but it's renamed. And there was a really kind of core, concise comment, which says, what happened to her is what you're advocating for anything that you want to give away from government. Like that's the power that you're saying. So free healthcare, there's not a single thing that the government won't kick your door in and kill you over. There's no law too small that it goes that far along. And so that's the struggle for me, and is the disconnect, because you can see it, right? You can see it in these are pretty sane people that have a pretty good grasp of reality. You think they'd make this connection. And so you're actually out there making that connection for people. I mean, so that just hats off to you, Spike. This is not only are you like, do I envy your ability to succinctly sort of just damage somebody with your words. Like, I've seen you at some city councils, and I mean, I'm talking about, like, call the homicide team, because it's murder. I mean, just absolutely. But the fact that you're really making this happen, I think, is really pretty awesome. Tell us about some wins, though. Tell us about some things that you've won here.
Absolutely. Well, one win that we've had so far with these types of cases was like what I was talking about with the Hernandez family. That's only one part of it. We also got to get the charges dropped. But when those charges get dropped, it's already set in place that the family court judge has said, listen, you can have these kids back. I'm going to let you see these kids as often as you want to with your family. I'm basically taking as much of my hands off as I'm allowed to. And the very second that those charges are dropped, those kids are going to be back with you. So that in my mind is already significantly towards our end goal there, and was a pretty big win. Another win that we had, there was a lady, this was last year, there was a lady whose home burned down, and the insurance company gave her and her family there's a name for this that's used in different names. We call it we'd call it an RV or a camper here, but I've heard people call it a Four Seasons home or whatever, a temporary home for them to live in while their home was being rebuilt.
Call them permanent property here in Arkansas. It's a nice,
a permanent single family home.
a nice place here in Arkansas.
On wheels, a permanent wheeled home. So anyway, they gave them this to live in, and the zoning board of her county said, you have 2 residences on your property, and we're going to start fining you several $1,000s a day or a week or something like that. Or you can just give us your property and leave. Yeah. And now keep in mind, one of those residences was a completely burned to the ground, charred foundation.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, we found out about, they had been doing this a lot. We found out about it. They backed off, and it ended up triggering a judge reining them in, because the way that they were doing their meetings was illegal. So that was a win. Gosh, I'm blanking now. What's another? We've had so many wins.
You had one being homeless, I think. You had one. There was a.
Oh yeah, those. Okay, so those are some recent ones as well. I'm sorry, man. I've been awake since 3 a.m.
It's okay.
Working on this stuff. So another one that we had, actually 3 that we had. There were 3 different cities. This is another. Oh, that's another update. Thank you. Thank you, D. I'll be giving that update as well. See, we've had all these wins. I'm exhausted right now. So this was another one where we had one case of something, and then a bunch of other ones came out of the woodwork. There were 3 different cities in Gastonia, North Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, and Springerville, West Virginia. No, Springerville's in Arizona, and we had a win there too. It's in West Virginia. Grandpa Joe, that's in Springerville, West Arizona. This is what happens when I need to sleep desperately. But we had 3 cities, and it was all largely the same thing. It was a charity that was going around and feeding people who were in need and trying to help them get back on their feet. And the government would step in, the police would step in and say, we'll arrest you if you keep doing this. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be allowed to do this anymore. And in all 3 of those cases, we got involved. The government's backed off, and they're back to feeding people and helping people that are in need in those 3 places. And then Springerville, Arizona, Grandpa Joe, there was a man who was living on his grandchildren's property in his own like a little camper or something like that. He's somewhat independent. He's also 93 years old. So It's nice for him to be on his family's property. He's there with his grandkids, and he can, be close to his family and so forth. The government tried kicking him off the property. The city government there. We got involved. They backed off, and he's now allowed to live with his family. Nathan Harmon, the former sheriff of Berkeley County, West Virginia. The crazy thing about this, for those who followed this drama, this all started, we only got involved because he was deleting people's comments on Facebook. Yeah. That's literally, we would have never known about this guy. I mean, of all the things, I go, and it was one of my typical, I go on and go, hey, we heard you're doing this, and this is against the law, and you should stop, and blah, blah, blah. And so, we did that, and then we didn't hear anything. He kind of backed off. He actually went on one of my posts and said, I think we share a lot in common. We should probably talk one day. I'm like, hey, maybe this guy turned around. Yeah, sure. So then like 3 months later, turns out his daughter gets drunk and gets into an accident and smashes her car into someone's property. He shows up, tells the responding officer he's got it taken care of. And we now know he then gave his daughter a breathalyzer test. It came back way above the legal limit. He removed a tracker that he had put on her car, which means he knew what she was doing. We found all this out afterwards. Yeah. And
that's not weird at all.
That's not weird. And, and then we find out that, like, from some of his family members or from some of her family members, that, like, he had been threatening them because they were saying, hey, you need to get your daughter under control. She's going to hurt someone. So then we released that. That helps to trigger an investigation into his conduct and into what she did. In the middle of that, she tries to beat someone to death. And so she's
shouldn't laugh. I'm not supposed to laugh at that, but yes, I mean,
yeah, no, she like literally like gorilla stomping this woman with like 3 other people and tries to beat her brains in with a pool cue or something, pool ball or something like that. Like,
It was a pool stick, whatever.
A pool stick, yeah. So she's arrested for that. And then it turns out that he's being charged with lying to police about the thing with his daughter. He resigns. Then he announces that he's running for re-election. He goes on. Oh, and in the middle of this, he's going on these interviews with local media. And anytime it's being live streamed, me and a bunch of my people are on there in the comments, just lighting him up. But we didn't have to be there because he would just go and tell lie after lie. If you look up Harmon Files on my YouTube channel, you'll find this saga of just he would tell a sentence and then he'd tell 3 different lies in a sentence, all of which contradicted one another. Like insane levels of lying. Like
it was a Monday because I knew it was a Tuesday. But
it was
that's
a Tuesday,
also they get paid, which is a Friday.
And if you didn't say it was a Monday, then you're the biggest liar on earth because it was a Friday. Like it was just like that insanity. And so he announces he's running for re-election. Then he gets charged with DUI. And then because he ends up getting drunk driving. Real winner this guy is. And as most recently, the update is he has announced he's not running anymore for re-election.
Wow.
So I think the nightmare of Nathan Harmon is behind us. But that all came from that. I mean, I said that before, and then he said, "I'm running for re-election." Like it was like a week later.
I withdraw my withdrawal.
I resign in disgrace to avoid being prosecuted. Actually, I'm running again. And so and in the middle of that, it turns out he tried framing the former sheriff by threatening ex-convicts with framing them if they didn't give fraudulent testimony about the sheriff.
Try that.
He's not here in Arkansas. I mean, he sounds like he could really fit in, here with the Clinton family. I mean, like he's really skilled at this.
He's at Clinton level. Thankfully not at Clinton levels of power, but certainly at Clinton levels of just brazen corruption. And so, but all of that, and what's crazy is we've had so many people in and around that area reach out and go, we have been trying to talk about this guy for so long and we could never get any traction. And, it took an outside group just exposing the world to what this guy was doing to finally embarrass West Virginia authorities enough to actually look into this. And it triggered the whole thing that then ended up happening. And again, this was a nonpartisan thing. I'm not even 100% sure what political party he's a part of, nor do I care. I literally just want corrupt officials to be held accountable and for the public that they're supposed to be serving to know what they're doing. That's it.
Speaking of partisan issues, let's switch gears real quick. So I'm going to ask Spike to take off the You Are the Power shirt and just bare your chest like you did in that photo. Blevins was in the background. Let's see the chest.
I'll put on some pasties. Yes.
Okay, yeah. Well, no. We don't need to go that far.
No, not that.
we're very open here, so
Okay.
let's but
free the nipple.
No.
So we're not doing anything. You are the power at this moment.
Yeah.
That is closed.
I am
We're
now
not talking to Spike Cohen.
That was a different time in my life. At
Yes.
that time, I was talking as Spike Cohen in the capacity of my being the president of a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. I am now. I've changed so much in the last few seconds.
I've resigned.
I am now I am a completely new man, new me. I am now speaking as a hyper partisan libertarian who still just happens to be wearing this shirt.
Okay, so I want to ask you a question. In this being the most important election of the entire existence, whether you believe in the Big Bang or day one of the Old Testament, this being the most important election that has ever been foretold, and the prospect of a repeat of 2020, where does Spike Cohen stand on Joe Biden and Donald Trump at the moment?
I mean, I'd love to. Well, I probably shouldn't say that. I mean, I'd say it doesn't matter what shirt I'm wearing. I probably shouldn't say that.
My attorney has advised you not to finish.
My attorney has. I would like to plead the fifth as to where I stand on the. No, listen. I think that we have the benefit, I guess I could call it, of knowing what 4 years with both of them is like.
Exactly.
And it looks like pretty damn close to the same. It looks like a bunch of money being printed out of thin air and being mostly handed to well-connected multinational corporations and billionaires and powerful government agencies. Maybe a little trickle down of that money down to the rest of us. For every dollar we get, we're being taxed at least $1 now. There's at least $10 plus interest being run up in debt in our names. And the value of that dollar is being diminished because they're printing out more money to fund that debt. So you're literally getting screwed in every single way. And it does not matter whether it's a Republican or Democrat. It certainly doesn't matter whether it's Trump or Biden. Donald Trump, Joe Biden's going to have to work hard to break Donald Trump's single term record for the amount of debt he ran up. He's looking like he might actually pull it off, which is pretty damn impressive. But that's what we're looking at here. Like, they looked at Obama's debt numbers, which dwarfed George W. Bush's debt numbers, which dwarfed Ronald Reagan's debt numbers, which dwarfed FDR's debt numbers. They looked at Obama's numbers and went, nah, that's a baseline. We can do that in one term. He had to take 2 terms to do that. We can do that in 1 term. It's embarrassing. And the regulatory capture state continues to grow to the benefit of the multinational, essentially monopolistic corporations, big pharma, big tech, big ag, big everything else, who run those agencies through regulatory capture. The spying and enforcement apparatus continues to grow. Journalists continue to be at risk to being punished for exposing things that should be exposed. So it doesn't really matter which one of them wins. It's going to suck either way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're going to get the same thing, right? Same thing. Yeah. So, but Spike, the government protects us from the corporations, right? Like, we need a robust government to protect us, right?
Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
What the hell? Are you guys actually saying bad stuff about my government? Because I will not stand for that malarkey on the Black Powder podcast.
What brilliant words does a Spike Cohen weave when someone says something like that to you?
Well, it was funny. Earlier today, I had someone, or was this yesterday? Again, I haven't slept in a very long time.
Together.
So yesterday. Whatever. Very recently, I had someone go, but without government, how are we going to deal with disease and fighting in war and all these and protecting us from multinational corporations? And I said, well, those multinational corporations get the protection and enrichment that they need to sustain being so big and bloated because of those regulations and the subsidies and protections that come with it. Government created COVID, so there's your disease mitigation there. And government starts every war and genocide that we've seen in the past several years, certainly all the major ones. So yeah, I feel like maybe government isn't a good agency, a good organization to protect us. And I guess further what I'd say is the problem isn't who's in charge of the government. It's that the government is structured the way it is.
Right.
All governments are violent monopolies. They are monopolies on violence that are funded by extortion and theft, extortion being taxes and theft being inflation. They are enforced through violence and threats of violence, and they ban the only feedback mechanisms that can keep an organization accountable, and that is disassociation or opting out and competition. You are not allowed to not participate in government. You know, you have to pay your taxes, you have to do all of that, you have to obey their rules, and you are certainly not allowed to create a new competing government within their presumed jurisdiction. So by default, they have set themselves up as a monopoly, which means that you can either take their services or leave them, but you're not getting them from anyone else. Because they've removed the feedback mechanisms that could hold them accountable, they don't really have to give you a good value for your service. And because they're taking money from you at will against your will, they don't really have to prove that they are providing you any real value. They give you this sort of like democratic system to choose which figurehead is pressing the murder and theft button, as though that makes a difference. And just so by its nature, as we're talking about with the CPS cases or defects cases, as we're talking about with zoning abuse or eminent domain abuse or any of these other abuses, every incentive is in place for them to be abusive, and there is no disincentive in place for them to do it.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Summed it up pretty well.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eric.
I think there might be a delay again. Hey, Spike, are you going to be at National Convention?
Yes. Yeah, I will be there.
Excellent. Then I'll see you there.
I just wanted to expand on Spike's point, because the main thing that government only understands two things: it's money and violence. And when they have control over both, are you really free? Are you really what's instilled as soon as you enter a public school, as far as the United States goes, where they say this is the land of the free, home of the brave, all that good stuff. Are you really free in America? And that's what you got to ask yourself when you're voting for Democrats and Republicans, because everybody's mad about the government. Well, a lot of young people are mad about the government possibly banning TikTok for their surveillance of American citizens. Yet, nobody's mad when the Patriot Act was installed, because that's here to protect you. We want to be able to listen
What's
to
patriotic?
Every comment.
You
That's
must be
why
with the terrorists, Marcus. Yeah, you must be with the terrorists.
Yeah. Or the NDAA, well, aspects of the NDAA, where they're collecting all your data. But TikTok, because it's China. And we all know China is after us. They're coming for us.
Yeah, man.
So what's crazy about this TikTok thing, and it's almost across the board, no one's actually talking about what the bill does. They keep just saying it will force TikTok to either disassociate from ByteDance, which is the Chinese owned company that owns TikTok, or they'll be banned. What it doesn't say is it also gives the president power to ban any platform or website he wants, and all he has to do is say that they're an adversary.
Yep.
There's no guideline for what that means. It just, all he has to do is say they're an adversary. And there may be one or two people on here going, yeah, but he wouldn't do that unless they were really an adversary. Read the Patriot Act.
Yep.
The Patriot Act is supposed to only be used against Al-Qaeda. Read the authorization of use of military force, which was used to authorize the invasion of Afghanistan and has since been used to authorize every single military action that has been taken since October of 2001.
Yep.
Read it. It says it's only to go after the terrorists who were directly involved with 9/11.
Yeah.
It's still being used now with people that had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. And at some point during the Obama administration, they stopped even trying to pretend that it had anything to do with that. They are now completely operating as a rogue entity with their own justifications in place. I mean, it is absolutely insane. So if you look at the wording of the so-called TikTok ban and conclude, oh, well, it says it has to be an adversary, then you have to literally ignore the rest of American government history. I say this every single time.
Yeah.
In order for the government to get a new power to point as a gun against your head, they have to get buy-in from the right wing. And the reason for that is because the right wing is the most likely group of people to go, whoa, wait a second. I don't want the government to have more power to surveil me. So every time they introduce it, they introduce a boogeyman to the right.
Fear.
With the Patriot Act, it was Muslims, or I'm sorry, Muslim terrorists, but it was Muslims.
Right.
So when people heard the news articles, this is being used against innocent Muslims and Muslims in other countries that haven't even done it. A lot of people on the right are like, I don't care. All right, good, fine. I don't care. What, they're Muslims. I don't care. They should stop being Muslim. And now they're doing it with TikTok because inevitably when they go, well, but TikTok technically is in Singapore and they're not really a tie. But a lot of right wingers go, I don't care. I don't like them Chinamen.
Mm-hmm.
They did the Wuhan flu.
Mm-hmm.
If you get buy-in from the right, that gives them enough time to get their hooks in. And almost always the right becomes the primary target of this stuff. They attack They attack everyone.
The same people who advocated for the Department of Homeland Security be created here, 19 years later, or 20 or 21 years later, are screaming about it being used against them.
Yep, exactly. And so
we were screaming this to you in 2002.
Yeah, and I literally go ahead.
I have to laugh at them because this is what they asked for. They bought the fear. They bought they're going to come into my kitchen table and take my bacon and eggs off my plate, eat it in front of me while they do strange things to my daughter. They bought all the fear the government sells them. And that's one of the main things the Uniparty, if not the only thing the Uniparty does very well, is selling Americans fear.
Scaring the crap out of us. Yeah. No, they're great at scaring everyone.
Who here is scared of I was saying,
for like 10 years, we were always at like yellow or orange terror level for like 10 years after 9/11, like every day.
We never. Yeah,
I want to speak to that 10 years because I think this is 10 years that I have cyber known Spike.
Yeah,
and I want to.
That's a minute.
I really want to thank you for your success that I instilled in you. Via my original endorsement when you ran with Vermin Supreme. Spike Cohen would not be here on the Black Powder podcast if not for Marcus Matthews, the only real libertarian.
That's right.
I'd have nothing.
Yeah. You're nothing.
Marcus's podcast. Marcus's podcast was one of the first ones that I was ever on, and Marcus was one of my first guests on my podcast. Yeah. And so it is not hyperbolic at all to say that I would have nothing, not my political career, not my nonprofit. Arguably, I wouldn't have my wife, who I met 15 years before I met you. I wouldn't have anything. I'd be in the streets with nothing. My career I started in the 90s. I wouldn't have any of that.
None of that. I want to say I stood up for you at the annual meeting of Black men that says he's one of us. Because you were a tad bit late coming on the podcast, and I told the guys Spike Cohen is black.
That's right. Yeah,
he is a black man.
He's on someone's time.
CPP. Well, and that's not a slight. That is respect for me because you respected me enough to honor Black tradition.
I respected you enough to be just a couple minutes late.
To honor the timeless tradition of being
And
2 or 3 minutes.
And I called first and said, "Yeah, I'm on my way. I'm on my way." And I was not on my way.
You were still at home when you said you were.
I was sitting on the couch right there. Yeah, no, I'm booting up. I'm booting up right now.
So we're coming up here at the end of the show. We're over now. We're here now. Spike, how can people find you? And how can they get involved with you?
Yeah.
So the answer to both is youarethepower.net. If you want to be involved with the fastest growing and arguably certainly one of the most, if not the most impactful liberty organization in the country right now, I invite you to join us at You Are the Power by going to youarethepower.net. We have free membership. So if you are either not in a position to be able to donate to the cause, or you want to just spend some time with us and see if we're about what you're about before you start giving, you go to youarethepower.net. You can sign up today. If you want to follow just my general hijinks and what I'm doing, including with You Are the Power, I'm pretty easy to find. If you look for Spike Cohen on the internet, you'll find me. I'm pretty loud. I'm out there. If you get lost, you just look for like the ATF page, and I'll be beating them up there. So
every now and then
you'll find me. I'm pretty easy to find.
Every now and then, we have somebody that steals your Twitter handle or tries to, subterfuge.
Oh my Lord! Thankfully, that stopped. So far it hasn't happened, but for like a maybe 6-month period, there were like 60 different Spike, and not just on Twitter. It was on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. I'm like, is this like a new thing where I'm always going to have and it was constant. And I would have like my loved ones who were like, I'm being followed by your new page. I'm like, no, that's not my new page.
Were they at least doing anything like positive?
No, like bad.
No, some of them were doing nothing, which I don't even like. What's the scam here? You're doing nothing. Like, what are you doing? And then some of them would follow people to get them to follow them back. And then they'd be like, oh, hello, dear. How is your cryptocurrency going or whatever? Like they're doing some kind of, so I am lost in Kenya. Please send me a check. Whatever.
Shane Hazel keeps sending me those messages.
Hey, I just want
to but that's real. That's actually real. Shane actually is lost in Kenya and needs our help.
And one of the pages was created by the Black Powder Podcast only to build up our resume as being a legitimate libertarian organization. We didn't really post anything, but I just wanted to capitalize off the Spike Cohen aura and how he has built. One of the things I most admire about you is how you have drawn in so many people and how it has become a movement, because that is very hard to do. And I want to salute you and thank you for that. Yeah, and once again, it's youarethepower.net. And let's do something. Let's not just make this a passing moment. Let's make sure we as libertarians, and I want to talk about District 75 real quick before we let you go, Spike, because I want you to speak to Michael White on your experience and what we need to do, because this is the most winnable libertarian race in the United States at the moment. And you always speak to how we have to start locally and show we can govern locally and do grand things. So I want to ask you, what advice do you have for Michael White as he proceeds forward with his campaign?
Well, first of all, I mean, I watched you in your last campaign. You were as pitch perfect as someone running for, it was for Congress, right?
Yes, sir.
You were as pitch perfect in that campaign as anyone in your position could have been. I was routinely pointing to you when people were saying, like, what are some good examples of people that are, dealing with media well and doing well in debates and stuff. And I'm like, oh, watch Michael White. Like I that's as good as it gets. Cause I could point to a lot of interviews I had done when I was running, but I never participated in any debates. So I'm like, if you need to see the debate side of this, that Michael White's, that's where you got to go to take a look at that. I would say that your district better than I do. So I would be happy to sit down and talk with you about specifics of your district, what to do in rural areas, what to do in suburban areas and things like that. Generally speaking, I think you're already doing what you need to do, and that's demonstrating yourself as a local leader. Because when someone is running, the more local a race is, the less people care. And it shouldn't be this way, but it is. The average voter the more local the race is, the less they care about your policies or your ideology per se, as they do about real basic lizard brain stuff. Have I heard of this person? How often have I heard of this person relative to the other people that are running? Like, that's probably the biggest one. If they see your name as often or more often as the others that you're running against, that's probably the biggest indicator of whether they'll vote for you or not. It's infuriating that is, but it is. It is what it is. Another one is, do I have any reason to think this person cares about me? And has this person demonstrated their care in any way, especially in our community? And then if they care at all, after that, it's, well, how do they plan to help me? But honestly, the most basic stuff are, do I recognize this person's name significantly? Right. Have they proven that they care about me and that they're doing things in our community? And if you're doing that, then it is absolutely a winnable race. And the beauty of having you in the Arkansas state legislature is that you can actually show what libertarianism looks like in practice. One of the biggest things, probably the single biggest thing that libertarians face, is this narrative of you can't win. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if enough people believe that we can't win, then they don't vote for us, and we literally cannot win.
Yep.
But if we get a race where we can win, and then you get in there and you show what liberty looks like, what libertarianism looks like, what libertarian governance looks like, then the narrative switches from you can't win to, wow, not only can you win, but when you win, I win too. Because so many people have resigned themselves to just voting for the lesser of two evils, knowing they're being lied to, knowing they're not going to get most of what they want. They basically just vote for the person whose lies they like the most. And it is it's why so many people don't bother voting, because they're like, why would I do that?
Why bother?
But when they see that when they vote for you, they actually get something back. They actually win, and they actually are more free, and they live a better life as a result. That has a major domino effect. So I wish you the best. Like I said, please reach out. I'm happy to talk one-on-one more in depth about your specific district. I have people that I can have you talk with who are great at media and in press releases and things like that. I can get you lined up with people that can give you all sorts of really good guidance in your campaign. I wish you the best. And if you win that race, you will be the highest elected libertarian that we have right now. So Godspeed.
Man, thank you for those kind words. That's really awesome. I mean, that's my goal, is to make liberty legitimate, to end this cycle of we can't win, right? To get that moving away. So that means a lot. Thank you so much. Marcus, you want to go ahead and wrap us up, man?
Yeah, I just want to tell everybody, don't be apathetic. Apathetic.
Or apathetic. Don't be apathetic either.
We engage in ebonics here.
That's right.
Especially Spike.
Listen, I'm the resident black man. I know that. Yeah. I know about that.
And I wanted to say earlier, when you said smuck, I wanted you to say after that, that's our word, so you can't use it. I wish you would have said that. I truly do. And
I don't think anyone should use that word.
Yeah,
not with the hard.
Because he used the hard K. Yeah, he
not with the hard K.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of in there.
If you just say schma, it's actually just like a rap song. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but
you're allowed to sing along.
That's not. Don't do that.
You're allowed to sing along. Yeah.
But I wish Americans wouldn't be so apathetic towards voting, because we have some of the lowest voter turnouts in primaries and everything. And a lot of people fought hard for that right to vote. And that's the thing libertarians also need to stress, like they say libertarians can win. We can win if you effing go out there and vote and stop saying, oh, blah, 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 blah. Stop choking on that uniparty D. And with that, I want to say, as always, live free.
Or die.
Or die.
There we go. Now the world's longest click. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We really appreciate it.
I just want to say Spike Cohen loves black people. and
Yes.
as I always
The
do.
opposite of George W.
Always
Bush.
has. Always
Yes.
has. Don't be a
Yeah.
schmuck.
Please clap.
That's their word. All right.
That's my word. That's
God bless you all.
The click.
my word.
Their click.